I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thanks so much for listening to my podcast. If you like what you hear, please follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and also at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thanks so much for listening. Enjoy it. I'm so excited to discuss my sponsor today, which is Page One Books, because my summer book bundle is ready on pageonebooks.com. And the bundle that I've put together includes 3 books that I picked, Montauk by Nicola Harrison, More Myself by Alicia Keys, and I Miss You When I Blink by Mary Laura Philpott, all of which have been on this podcast here. It includes a Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books beach tote, a cute little library card pencil / cosmetic case, and a water bottle for staying hydrated, plus a little thing of sun lotion. So go to pageonebooks.com, page one with the number 1, so pageonebooks.com, and check out my Page One Books summer bundle. Buy it as a gift, a housewarming, if you actually go somewhere, or just give it to yourself. Everybody needs a treat. We've had a long spring. pageonebooks.com. Welcome to day 3 of my second week of my July book blast. So I guess technically this is day 8 of my July book blast. And today is Beach Reads Wednesday. I love beach reads. I wish I had more time to just sit on the beach and read, as I'm sure we all do. But instead of that, I'm offering up all these amazing beach read books, which you should definitely check out this summer and beyond. Liz Fenton and Lisa Steinke have been best friends for over 30 years. They are the co-authors of 7 novels, including the Amazon charts bestseller, The Good Widow. Their most recent book, How to Save a Life, is a dark, heart-pounding love story with a Groundhog Day twist. Lisa and Liz host the popular podcast We Fight So You Don't Have To, and are monthly on-air contributors on their local news with Liz and Lisa's Book Club. In their former lives, Liz worked in the pharmaceutical industry and Lisa was a talk show producer. They both reside with their families and several rescue dogs in Southern California. So welcome, Lisa and Liz, to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Maybe just announce who you are. I can see because I'm like watching you, but whose voice is whose?
This is Liz.
This is Lisa. Thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
So How to Save a Life is your latest novel. Can you tell listeners, please, what it's about?
It's a dark, heart-pounding love story, and it's about Dom and Mia. So 10 years ago, Dom and Mia were engaged and they broke up. So fast forward a decade, and Dom runs into Mia at a coffee shop. And he's kind of never really gotten over her. He always regretted breaking up with her, and he hasn't really moved on. So he asks her out on a date. It's Tuesday. He asks her out for Thursday. They go out Thursday night to the San Diego County Fair, and she dies on a ride. So obviously he's devastated. He wakes up the next day, it's still Thursday, and he has another opportunity. So he's not quite sure what's going on. So he asks her, they have their date, but obviously he plans something else. He doesn't take her to the carnival. It's like, maybe we shouldn't go. And she dies again. So what happens after that is he's stuck in a time loop, trying to save her life, trying to save what they had together. And then there's also different pieces of his life in that day that he's trying to figure out, almost like a puzzle he's trying to put back together.
And how did you come up with this? It's like sliding doors-ish, but it's like the same bad news over and over again and like wanting to have a different outcome. Isn't that what they say like the definition of craziness is? I feel like my therapist might have told me this at one point, is like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Outcome. Yeah. Well, our last book, The Two Lila Bennett's, was a sliding doors concept. So we had already tried that, but we were on vacation and we were trying to figure out, we're in the pool, we're drinking cocktails. We were trying to figure out what to do. And we first were going to do like a Groundhog Day twist, but with more of a suspense angle, like our previous books. And then Liz got to talking about the 7.5 Lives of
Death of Evelyn Hardcastle. One of my favorite books. I had brought it on vacation. I just finished it.
Yeah. And so that book, is a man who wakes up every day in a different person's body at a party. And so we kind of were talking about that and just tossing it around. And we eventually came to this, I guess just as a brainstorm goes. But we wanted it to be like lighter and more of a love story that we could play out in it as well.
And I was sort of struck. I feel like it's been a long time since I read a novel by 2 women from the point of view of a man. So when it started about like the bulge in his pants, I was like, wait a minute. Who's telling this story? Like, what's going on?
That was Liz's line. She's notorious for a good opening line in a book, I have to say. I have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say.
Thank you, Lisa. Our debut novel, the opening line is "My mouth tastes like ass." So you'll have to read to find out why. But yeah, that was actually from a rewrite. That wasn't the original first line. And then when we went to edits with our publisher, we ended up kind of restructuring the first 1/3 of the way we were telling the story, and so we had to jump off from their engagement. And the first page, as a reader and also an author, like the first page is so important to pull people in.
Well, I think we're hoping that pulls people in. And it was also fun to write from a male point of view for the first time. I don't know if we were just shying away from it because we're not men and it's not as comfortable, but we just wanted to get out of our comfort zone and give it a try. And then we both kind of ended up falling in love with him a little bit.
I have a major crush on him. I mean, but it was fun. I think, we get bored, and I think it's why like our first 3 books were magical realism, then we just went to suspense, and now we're back. I think that, we pivot a lot, good or bad, right? Like of our career, like we pivot. So I think with us, like you never really know like what you're going to get in a book because we always want to write what we love. And so we've just found when we don't do that, there's problems. So whether like we just write what we want to read and what we love in that moment, and we hope our audience will come along for the ride.
I feel like it's so easy to tell when somebody's not passionate about what they're writing about, right? You can feel the lack of fire behind it, really,
right,
even though it's sort of intangible. But so how did the two of you originally get together? Have you been like, what's your whole story and how did you decide to start becoming co-authors?
We've known each other a very long time, 4 years or something. We're losing track at this point, but went to high school together and college together and roommates afterward. And, just through the course of all that, just talked about it, but not really thinking it was ever going to actually happen. Just like one of those things, because we've always been like voracious readers since we were very young. And so these authors inspired us, but we never thought it was going to happen. And then just one day, I don't even know, out of the blue, like 15 years into our friendship, I brought it up again, and I had written something and I sent it to her, and the rest is kind of history. Like we just did not expect it, but we're so happy it actually ended up taking off.
That's amazing. And talk about all of your external support for the book community at large and how you're on the San Diego show and all the rest of it and the original influencers, essentially.
So as Lisa mentioned, we're huge readers and we're huge fangirls of authors. And so, long before we were championing books before we got our first book deal. And now we continue that. We're lucky enough to have on our local news, we have a monthly book club segment every month where we get to talk about books. And we have a podcast, We Fight So You Don't Have to, which is about us, but we also talk about books, but we also, we bicker. We're like sisters. So we're hoping people can learn from our mistakes. We're also partnering with Warwick's Bookstore in La Jolla, who's our local independent bookstore for a couch surfing book tour. We connected with them right when COVID happened, and we're like, how can we help? Like, what can we do? And so twice a week, we have authors on and talk about their books. And that's been really rewarding and really fun. And it's fun to help the authors who have their books coming out and they're disappointed. And it's been great to partner with Warwick's, who we adore, and hopefully drive some book sales for them. So, right, Lisa? I mean, I think it's been really rewarding in like this dark
it's
time.
kind of nice to be on in the other seat sometimes because there's so many bookstagrammers and people like you that are just so supportive of us. And so we're always thinking about what we can do to give back. So it's a reciprocal situation because we wouldn't be where we are without the bookstagram community for sure. So it is nice to give back a little bit too.
So tell me about your fighting. Let me hear some of these fights. Give me like a few examples. How down and dirty are these fights? What are we talking here?
Well, we've gotten a lot better. So, this is the evolution, right? I think we've been writing together at this point about 10 years writing together. We've been friends for 34. We're really like family. I think, and Lisa, I'll let you speak to this, but I think transitioning from a friendship to running a business together is a really interesting thing, especially with something creative like writing. But Lisa, you always do a good job.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Liz. See, that is
You're
just a perfect
welcome. See,
example. That's a perfect
we've
example
had
of how far we've come. Yeah, there's been some door slamming. There's been a lot of like just emotions that kind of we can't control over the years. And it was never really in regard to what we were going to write about or anything like that. It was just other stuff. It's kind of like a marriage when you're, fighting about the toilet paper, but it's not really about the toilet paper. And it took us many, many years to figure out that this wasn't just a friendship, it was a business relationship too. And we'd never sat down and had a conversation about how different we are and how that was going to play into our writing process. And so a few years ago, everything kind of came to a head and we talked about maybe not continuing because we couldn't figure out what the problem was. There had been so much tension and we'd had a really rough edit and some other things that happened in our personal lives at the same time. And so it just all kind of came together and we had to step back and just start talking about our business and our roles in that. And once we kind of ironed all that out, we've gotten to a much better place. I'm not saying we don't ever have an argument, but we definitely have avoided many, I think, as a result.
I think too, if I could add, Lisa, I think one
You
thing
can.
we've got, thank you. I think one thing we've gotten better at is I think it's like a seesaw and we lose the balance. Like sometimes we're just all business all the time and we kind of forget that we're best friends who like having a good time together. And I think we've gotten better at balancing those things because it just became like all business. Well, we're still friends that need each other and need that support and need to talk about like, our teenagers being idiots or like whatever. Sorry, teenagers, if you're listening, but
they're not listening.
They're idiot.
They do not care what we're doing.
They're not listening, and they are idiots. But at least mine are. But I think the best thing we've done, probably, and honestly, probably just in the last 6 months, I think we've gotten better. I mean, that's how like we're always evolving, is getting better at that balance of friendship versus business. And so I think we're both a lot more fulfilled with each other. We sound like we're married, like, and we're in therapy.
I know
now,
we
Lisa.
do. Or like in couples counseling or something. It's really getting.
Tell me more about that.
Change this. Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk more about the fight.
I had the lovely ladies who wrote the book called Work Wife on my show, Claire and Erica, and you should like maybe just pick that book up because it's all about this. It's about how to navigate the complexity of female friendship at the same time as running a business together.
I'm going to.
Oh yeah, that's going to be helpful because we're always learning.
I also feel that like being creative together is different. It's not like you guys are producing sweaters or something, right? Like it's it's stuff that usually lives in somebody's head, and to make that a joint production, that's tricky. Like I'm in such awe of all co-authors, right? Like who writes what? How do you do it? Like how do you actually do it? Do you use Google Docs or do you get together in person? Like do you split chapters? How did you do How to Save a Life?
We do not get together in person. The Nanny Diary girls told us once that they sit at a computer together and like write every line together. And Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen are like on a call all the time, like doing their lines together. And we're very different than that. We separately will write. So I'll write a chapter. And this is just what we came up with years ago, and it's just never changed. So I open a Word document. I write a chapter, I send it to Liz, she'll edit it and send it back. And we do keep passing it back and forth until we feel like it's in a good place. And then Liz will write a chapter and then we'll just do the whole book that way. And as far as like what we're going to put in each chapter, we do sit down and kind of map out maybe 5 or 6 chapters at a time, but it's still very loose. It's up to the person writing the chapter. There's a goal to accomplish within it, but it's up to them how to get to that goal. So I don't know, it just works for us. I know there's like fancy like writing tools online and things like that, but we're old school, Word doc girls until the very end. And then we do move over to Google Docs.
I do use Dropbox.
That's new. Yes, that's new. And then we do Google Doc at the end because during edits, we used to edit separately and send it back and forth. And then one day someone was like, there's something called Google Docs. And we're like, oh my God, that's great. So I think it was one of our kids.
The other day, I accidentally deleted like my whole team's Google Doc with like the entire schedule of like every podcast and everything because I had like deleted someone who left our business. I didn't know that like it was attached Anyway,
Oh my
so mental
God.
note,
Oh.
if you ever change your email address or something, like
Oh, yeah.
save
Good
that,
to know, 'cause
save that document.
that would be
You can get it back. You can get it back after
Okay.
the mistake for a little bit.
okay. Okay.
But anyway, just heads up on the on the Google Docs front. So in terms of when you generate new ideas, I know you said this one you were just like hanging in the pool and it just came to you. Is it always like that? Like it seems like you guys just have such an easy rapport that things just like bubble up. But do you ever get stuck on like one of you wants to write something really badly and the other one is like, no, I don't want to write that book?
Well,
The cruise
typically,
ship idea. You could tell her
oh,
about
well,
the
yeah.
dueling piano people. But anyway, I'll let
Well,
you.
typically we'll throw out a lot of ideas. And I think at this point, like she knows if I'm into an idea and I know she's mentioning the cruise ship. We went on a trip to Europe 2 years ago with our families and we were on a cruise ship. And I really there was these dueling piano people and the guy and the girl clearly, there was something going on, like their tension every night. And I was really into it. Maybe I was just drunk every night when we were there and I really wanted, but I could tell she wasn't into it. So I dropped it and she wanted to do this weird Blake Crouch ripoff book because I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years and she knew I wasn't into it. And so we don't argue about it. We kind of just move on because when the right idea, and I'm getting goosebumps as I say this, when the right idea comes, we both know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's something that's intangible and I don't even know how to explain it, but we both know it's like, yes, we're writing that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. In the creative, Lisa mentioned earlier, the creative is not what we fight about. We fight about like someone sending an eyeball emoji in a text, and you're like, "What are you trying to say?" Like, wait, the eyeball emoji, like, we're dumb. Like, we fight about stupid stuff when we're cranky or frustrated with our kids or something, and we take it out on each other.
I love how in this book, your character Dom is always wondering what people are thinking, like analyzing the relationships between everybody else. Like I'm always doing that myself. Like if I'm on vacation and you're like, ooh, is that the nanny or who could that be?
We do that all the
I
time.
had that exact, I was just on vacation. I had that exact, is that the nanny situation. And my husband and I, it was like 5 days and we still don't know. Was it the nanny or was it the mom? We do not know, but yeah. So I think
sometimes I even do that to myself. Like, what must people think? I wonder if other people are wondering if this is my nanny or if this is my sister, and if they would ever be able to guess that it's actually like my sister-in-law, or I don't know, whatever it is. But it's so great to give like a trait like that to the character and as like a journalistic tool for how he like sees the world and everything. Anyway.
Thanks for noticing that.
Relatable.
That was a fun little thing to put in for him.
Do you believe, I know this is like a bigger sort of fate-based question, but do you believe that things are meant to happen? Like Mia's going to die every day no matter what happens, and that's just fate? Or that we are actually in control of what's going on a fundamental level?
I feel like this is more your wheelhouse, Liz.
Yeah,
I
knew. I was watching your eyes because I knew you were going to pass this one to me. I think it's both. I think that sometimes the things are meant to be, but I also think our energy and our attitude determines like what we're attracting to ourselves. And I tell my kids this all the time. If you say I'm going to fail or I'm going to do this, well, you're sending all that energy to there. So I don't know if this is even I think it's a little bit of both. I think the universe, I think sometimes things are fated, but I do think we have control over attracting positive energy for positive results in our own life. And it's something that we try to do a lot. You should see, we have a whole manifestation boards, like in our minds. I'm pointing here because mine's right here, and really try to attract that positive energy and bring it to other people and situations, because who knows, right? You might as well just be positive because we don't really know.
Right.
Very true. Do you have any advice to aspiring authors?
Ooh, yeah, I would say write what you want to write first and foremost. Do not try to chase the market. Do not try to write what the latest hit book was. Like that was a mistake we made very early on, and that's why it took us 3 manuscripts to eventually get there. So that would be my advice. I'll throw it to Liz now.
Yeah, I would say just keep writing. I mean, we, as Lisa mentioned, we got our book deal with Simon & Schuster on our 3rd manuscript, and it had been 5 years, and we both were pretty successful in our own careers, Lisa in TV, and I mentioned myself in pharma. But I was done. And Lisa really pushed that she wanted to write one more book. And had we not done that, we wouldn't be here. I mean, I was like, hey, I'm really good at this, and this is a great job. And I don't know. I mean, I have 2 kids. I don't know if I need to do this. And so I think you have to push through that. I'm mentoring someone right now who's in their 3rd manuscript, and I'm really pushing them because they're talented, or pushing her because she's talented. And it just reminds me so much of us. So I just think that I think people forget too that even as published authors, like, we're dealing with rejection all the time. And I think they think once they get on this path of being a published writer, like, they never get rejected again. And it's like amazing. And I'm like, oh, no. You're going to still get rejected all the time in all these little ways. And that's just part of life and part of this business. So I think that aspiring writers need to remember that you're always being rejected. It's just, you just got to push through it.
Very true. I've actually decided that I think I'm going to start taking a survey, because it seems like everybody who sells a novel has had 2 rejected first, or 2, like, it just seems that way. Like,
or
yeah,
a bunch of rejections before they ultimately finally got there. But it was like 50, 60 in, like a J.K. Rowling or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, it's true. You just have to keep pushing forward. I'm sure there's a lot of us who have manuscripts sitting in the drawer,
So what's your next project? What are you working on next? What's it about?
It is, well, we can't talk about it too much because we're just finishing it up and we're not sure what's going to happen with it. But it is in the same vein as How to Save a Life. And we don't even have like a set title. So, but it's in the same vein. And we write a lot about regret and fate. And actually, to your question that you asked, it kind of asks that question. That's really the narrative question of the book. And I hadn't thought about it that way, but so thank you. But it's really is something fated, or can you control it? And that's the premise of the entire book.
Ooh, well, I can't wait to read that one.
Awesome. We're excited for you to read it.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thanks for all the stuff you also do for authors. I am so glad to be joined by people who enjoy interviewing other authors as much as I do. So
yeah.
I think it's super fun. So
well, thank you for all that you do. It's amazing. And we're so appreciative. And thank you for having us today.
My pleasure. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, ladies.
Okay. Bye.
I hope you've enjoyed this Beach Read on Beach Reads Wednesday, part of my July Book Blast. Thanks again for listening to my podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you liked this episode, please follow me on Instagram @ZibbyOwens and @Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, and sign up for my mailing list at zibbyowens.com so you can always hear about the latest things I'm up to. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much to Page One Books for sponsoring today's episode. I hope you'll all check out my summer beach bundle at pageonebooks.com. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music. Thanks for listening. You could always email me at zibby@zibbyowens.com.